Hello, Senior Bride here. Good morning. Today I'm going to talk about something that's kind of fun. Well, for us, it may not be so fun for Generation Z and Generation Alpha, but there are some things that just don't make sense to older generations, to millennials, to X, to boomers, to silent generation about these two generations, and I thought we'd have a little fun and discuss them. So there are differences. We were born into vastly different technological environments. Our social landscape's very different. Um, and there's obviously a struggle to understand each other. Some of the older generations are baffled by the values, behaviors, and preferences of these digital natives, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, whose lives are dominated by their smartphones, social media, new norms of identity, communication, and work. So let's look at some of the things that baffle us. One, the smartphone as an extra limb. Gen Z and Gen Alpha look at smartphones as not just tools, they are extensions of themselves. Where those of us who are a little older remember rotary phones, pre-digital life, and we marvel at how younger people can seemingly conduct their entire existence with this little screen. The hyperconnectivity, the obsession is bewildering. So we often wonder, why does Gen Z prioritize virtual relationships over real world connections? And how can they spend hours on apps like TikTok and YouTube, et cetera, without feeling the need to unplug? It's an interesting conundrum, and it reflects the ubiquity of smartphones in Gen Z and Alpha's formative years. For them, online and offline lives are inseparable. Socializing, working, learning, and even relaxing often occur digitally. For older adults, we're more likely to value face-to-face interaction, and the idea of forming deep connections online seems superficial and very alien. So many boomers and Gen Xers and millennials look at the constant smartphone use as a distraction or laziness. We may find it hard to grasp why the younger generations look at the smartphone as not a break from life, but life itself. Another issue that kind of confuses us oldies is the rise of the influencer. So older generations often struggle to comprehend the concept of influencers, where Gen Z and Alpha idolize figures who make careers out of social media presence and often earn staggering incomes doing so through endorsements and sponsored posts. For those of us who work those 9-to-5 jobs, the idea of earning millions for filming morning routines or trying on clothes seems a little absurd. Question the legitimacy of such careers. Is this a sustainable way to earn a living? They actually contribute to the world. However, for younger generations, influencers represent aspirations and accessibility. They provide relatable content, financial independence, and democratized fame. So we may view this world as shallow, but to Gen Z and Alpha, it's just a logical extension of the digital economy that they grew up with. Communication. And there is a language barrier, we know it. So for example, texting and emoji culture. We grew up writing formal letters and having lengthy phone conversations. So we see the brevity of Gen Z's communication dominated by text, emojis, abbreviations, and it feels alien. So I'm going to describe a couple of typical exchanges. So a boomer might text, "Hi, how are you? I hope you're doing well. Let me know when you're free to talk about the plans for dinner next week." Well, A Gen Z text for the similar issue might be with TMR. We might look at it as rude or dismissive. However, that younger generation doesn't value the pleasantries and context that we're so focused on. They prioritize efficiency and immediacy. Emojis can also confound older people, especially if we don't grasp the nuanced use and meaning they convey. Now, here's something that affects us: the death of the phone call. This is baffling to many older people, and it's Gen Z's aversion to phone calls. For many younger people, calling someone is seen as intrusive and unnecessary when they can just give a quick text or voice note. As older generations, we associate phone calls with intimacy, urgency, interaction, and we often feel slighted when our younger relatives avoid picking up the phone. So for example, for boomers, communication is about connection. To Gen Z and Alpha, it's about convenience. So what about in workplace norms? Goodbye 9 to 5. Gen Z and Alpha have grown up in a world that values flexibility and purpose over stability. Older generations who equate hard work with long hours in an office often struggle to understand this younger generation's attitudes towards work. For example, the gig economy. Many Gen Z workers embrace freelance gigs, side hustles, and remote jobs rather than traditional corporate careers. So boomers and Xers just often question the reliability of these arrangements. How do you plan for retirement without a steady paycheck? What happens if you lose your clients or side gigs? But we need to remember that the younger generations value flexibility and autonomy over the traditional markers of success. They're less interested in climbing the corporate ladder and more focused on balancing work with personal passions. A demanding work-life balance, where we focused on that demanding work-life balance. Gen Z and Alpha are more focused on their mental health, their wellness. They often reject jobs that require burnout level commitment. So we may perceive this as entitlement, but that's because we've endured decades of grueling activity in the office. For us, the workplace is like a proving ground. To Gen Z, it's a means to an end, and it shouldn't cost them their well-being. Another issue that confounds us is the redefinition of identity. So for Gen Z and Alpha, identity is fluid and intersectional, encompassing not just gender and sexuality, but also race, culture, and personal values. Where older generations who grew up in a more rigid social framework often struggle to keep up with the changes. So let's start with a few of them. Gender and sexuality. Younger generations widely embrace the LGBTQ plus community. Identities and concepts, and non-binary gender. Terms like they, them pronouns, gender fluid, may baffle older individuals accustomed to that binary categories of male and female. Many older adults do try to adapt, but others feel alienated by what they perceive as politicized language. Cancel culture and social accountability. Gen Z and Alpha are quick to hold people accountable for perceived transgressions, often through what we refer to as cancel culture. Now, to older generations, this can seem harsh, unforgiving, and especially when it targets public figures for mistakes made many decades ago. But we see them as unnecessary overcorrections. Younger people view them as essential for inclusivity and justice. consumer habits, experiences over possessions. So Gen Z and Alpha are reshaping consumer culture. They prioritize sustainability and experience over material goods. We equated, or often equated, success with home ownership, stable careers, etc. So for the younger generations, minimalism and sustainability are key. They frequently reject fast fashion and embrace thrift stores, rental services, eco-friendly brands. Boomers grew up valuing newness and quality, so this may seem frugal or unambitious. They value experiential spending. So instead of buying homes or cars, they're often spending their money on travel, concerts, dining out. We view this as short-sighted, failing to understand their generation's emphasis on living in the moment, enjoying their time. For those of us in the older generations, possessions were meant to represent security. For Gen Z and Alpha, they may see them as burdensome, both financially and environmentally. Another issue is education and activism. Gen Z and Alpha are thought of as the most educated and activist-oriented generations yet, but their approach to learning can baffle some of us older adults. Digital learning, for example, with the rise of online education platforms and media, social media, younger generations are less reliant on traditional schooling methods. They prefer self-directed, often informal learning, which contrasts significantly with our belief in credentialed, focused, structured learning styles. There's activism on social media. So we frequently see Gen Z using platforms like Instagram or Twitter for activism and championing causes ranging from climate change to racial equality, where we did this but perceived it as having to be out in the real world. It was a kind of a boots on the ground belief. Humor and pop culture have also changed. For Gen Z and Alpha, humor is characterized by irony, absurdism, and memes, which confuses some older adults. Boomers and Gen X grew up with sitcoms and stand-up comedy. So where younger people thrive on like TikTok skits, surreal memes and inside jokes that require cultural knowledge, we focus on kind of that direct, like I said, the sitcoms or comedy, stand-up comedy. Now, behavior values and cultural norms of Gen Z and Alpha can bewilder those of us who are a little older. It reflects a world transformed by rapid technological change and social changes as well. Baby boomers and Gen X may view these younger cohorts as disconnected or even overly idealistic, although that's questionable. But the behaviors are actually logical adaptations to the current circumstance. So in order to bridge this generational divide, we need to kind of think about things like empathy, open-mindedness, willingness to embrace change. What may seem incomprehensible today may define tomorrow. If you enjoyed this video, please, I ask you, hit subscribe and explore. Please share this video with people you think might be interested. And remember, to be senior is to be proud. Hugs.